As I was scouring the internet trying to find any information I could on surgical leg lengthening, I came across multiple videos of Joe Rogan and his fellow podcasters talking about leg lengthening with a kind of comical, cartoonish, horrific incredulity that, whether intentional or not, put a bit of a negative spin on this procedure. So in several of these videos, these gentlemen go on about the madness of going through leg lengthening just to make yourself a little taller. But what they do not address or even get into is the fact that this procedure was not intended to make average people taller in the first place, and in fact has only been in very recent years co-opted for that purpose. In fact, during my long search, I found it quite difficult to find anyone who was discussing this operation around its intended purposes. So what was the intended purpose of these limb lengthening procedures? Well, historically, it was intended to help handicapped individuals like myself, and maybe this guy, who were often born with multiple birth defects, to help get their limbs to more even lengths, as well as individuals who had suffered from complex fractures that had left them with severe deformities. Now, the other thing worth mentioning is the fact that because this surgery has begun to slowly catch up with surgeries like breast augmentation as popular elective cosmetic surgeries around the world, it's become more and more challenging for handicapped individuals like myself to get insurance to cover these operations due to the fact that insurance is now calling them elective and unnecessary. Now, just to clarify, I am in no way here to judge anyone who chooses to use this technology to get taller. It's your body, your time, your money, and your life. In fact, I just recently spoke with somebody who went from 5'1" to 5'4", and it has been an absolute net positive game changer for his quality of life. Now, with that said, in defense of all the podcasters who are freaking out about this surgery, back in 1997, when I saw the science fiction movie Gattaca, and being horrified when Ethan Hawke's character went through an old, more invasive version of this surgery to be taller, when I, at the time, refused to go through the same surgery when it was deemed medically necessary. I'm pretty sure I reacted to that movie the same way the podcasters are reacting now.
Look at the gap in his fucking leg. Look how big that gap is. Ah!
So about 10 years ago, in my 30s, I was personally denied a newer, less invasive version of this surgery due to the fact that the surgeons who were offering it were out of state and therefore out of my network. Aside from these challenges, on a positive side, I do want to say that kind of ironically, because there's more and more people who are going through this operation for cosmetic reasons, there's just a lot more surgeons who are providing this operation. In fact, there is now a specialist in my area who can provide this surgery. On a more ironic note, because of its aesthetic nature, I have to jump through more and more hoops in order to get approval. What Joe Rogan and all of his biohacking peers would probably like to know, considering how much they geek out on alternative healthcare and also how much they like to point out how broken the establishment of our healthcare system is that the disabled people who these procedures were created for are often the same people who are getting turned away due to the fact that it's becoming harder and harder for them to get covered for treatment. Now, I have found that most people only know about this operation due to the fact that there's so many people out there right now who are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a few inches taller, while somebody like myself is attempting to go from walking on something like this to eventually, over time, something like this. No matter who's doing the surgery and what their reasons are for doing it, it requires a ton of patience, tenacity, hard work, and willpower. And therefore, they have my respect. And my hope is that some of these famous influencers out there might become more informed of this issue, that there are thousands of people out there like myself, many of whom take extremely good care of their bodies in spite of the hand they were dealt. And due to this transformational surgery, in my case specifically, it will still be a game changer to be able to walk and stand with both my feet flat on the ground. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Please like and subscribe to this video, check out my previous videos, And if you haven't already, you can donate to my GoFundMe below as I continue my journey towards balance.